Hi guys, so today we are looking at two old television receivers. We've got this one here, which is a Crown, model number is 5TV65R. This is from around about 1980, perhaps a year before that, perhaps 1979, and this comprises of a television receiver and a radio as well. It's a portable device, there's a handle on it, takes batteries. And there was quite a few devices in the early 80s that had television receivers, the ghetto blasters as they were called, the radio cassettes, the portable radio cassettes. Some of those had a little mini TV screen in them as well. And this one is a UHF reception TV, and then so there's the dial for that, we've got a little dial for the UHF, and then the radio is switchable between VHF, medium wave and long wave, and there's a separate tuner there for this one. This one here is quite a bit older. This one is 1971 and it is a Sony. The model number of this one is 9-90UB, 1971, and this one has an 8-inch screen. This one's a 5-inch, this one's an 8-inch. The model number suggests perhaps it's a 9-inch because it's a 9-90, but the visible area on here, I've measured it and it's only 8 inches, so I think this is an 8-inch tube, unless they're taking into account the portion of the tube behind the bezel that you can't actually use. This one here, television receiver, but it has switchable UHF and VHF options. So there's two separate tuners. There's a tuner at the front here, and then there's a dial around this side as well for the VHF. Now, it's interesting that the VHF was never a channel which the UK broadcast television signals on. It is on some countries, or it was in some countries, but it wasn't in the UK. It was always UHF in the UK. But yeah, this is switchable between the two. There's no analog signals here at all at the moment in the UK, and I believe perhaps any country at the moment. They've stopped all those analog UHF, VHF television signals. So at the moment there's no way of picking up a signal. They do have antennas on them, they have rod aerials on the back, but it's not going to pick up anything. It's just going to show static on these devices. So what I want to do today is try and get some sort of signal on here. And now I've bought this, which is a UHF modulator. So it takes in the side composite video, composite audio, and then it outputs via an aerial socket the UHF, or the high frequency, which I'm hoping that these will be able to tune into. Now, it was very cheap. This was from a Chinese seller. I think it was £5, £4.99, maybe £5.99 including delivery. So yeah, I'm not holding my breath that it's going to work perfectly, but we will soon see. So what I'll do first of all, we'll just have a look at these individually, just a quick look around, and what sockets and features they've got on them, and then what we'll do is we'll get into the modulator and we'll try and get a signal on these. So this is a nice looking unit. I think it's quite cute. There was quite a number of portable devices of this era, sort of early 90s, that had a built-in TV. It seemed quite the thing to have a TV. So some of the portable stereos, you know, the bigger ghetto blasters as they were called, cassette players, they had TVs built in, and of course there was portable TVs you could buy with battery power, and they all had to be a kind of a certain size. So this depth here, most of this depth will be the length of the tube. Actual CRT tube here, it's only 5 inches at the front, but going back it's probably almost the full size of this casing. So they weren't very small. You couldn't, not like an LCD screen. They had to be you know, this depth. But it's got a handle on here, and it can be carried around. It has the aerial on the back here, telescopic aerial. battery compartment. So let's take a look at that. So 6 D-cell batteries in there, nice and clean in there. I don't think it's doesn't even look as though it's been used, that battery compartment. What have we got around here? Headphone socket, or earphone socket as it used to be called. Didn't used to call them headphones, used to call them earphones, and they've gone back to earphones now. So headphones to me is the cans, you know, that fit over your ears, the over-the-ear type headphones, and the most of them are sort of the small buds now that fit in your ear. So going back to earphone, I guess. So we've got an aerial input here, rod for the rod antenna that's on the back. External would be this socket here, and then on the other side we've got our power inputs. So we've got our mains power inputs here, 2-pin connector. We've got a 12-volt barrel jack. A bit unusual that the center pin is negative. Always catches people out. Most of these barrel jacks, almost all of them are center pin positive, and this one is center pin negative. Whenever you come across this, you can't just get any power pack out the cupboard and plug it in. You've got to make sure that that's the right polarity. Depending on the protection inside, you could blow a fuse or worse. We've got a switch here for, now this was for charging, so the CH stands for charge on. You could put, I don't know whether it was an actual rechargeable pack that you would put in here, or whether it was just the NiCads, you know, the rechargeable batteries, but either way, when it's in this position, it's charging up, so you'll plug it into the mains or the 12-volt barrel jack, switch it to charge, and it will charge those batteries up in the compartment. Or the other position is normal, which is TV and radio. We've got some controls here for the CRT, so brightness, contrast, vertical hold. Not sure what this is. It's just a small compartment here. There's no contacts or anything in there, so I'm not sure what that is. And then round the front, as said before, we've got our TV radio selector switch. We've got the radio band switch, volume, and then the 2 tuning dials, one for the TV, one for the radio. So I'll plug this in. Using the mains socket at the moment. So you can see the screen there. It's looking on the camera, I can see that the bands are scrolling up in here. I don't see that. I just see the static, a steady static. It's because of just the way the camera is. So yeah, we're not going to get anything on this. As I said, there's no transmissions. You might see a little bit of flicker or difference in tone in the audio, and that's just because of the electrical equipment that I've got around here. It's picking up various things from that, but we're not going to get a picture or any sound from the airwaves. And then radio. We might be able to pick up something on the radio. Put the aerial up. Maybe not. As I said, there's a lot of electrical equipment in here, so it'll be interfering with the radio. There we are. Get something. So that is this one, and like I said, I want to try and get the RF modulator connected up and see if we can get an image on this from another source, DVD player or set-top box, something like that, and see if we can get this doing something. So this is the other television set. This is the Sony one, and quite a bit older, this machine. This is probably 10 years older than the other one. As I said, early 1970s, 1971. And I do like this. I mean, this just looks great. I love the shape of this. It's just a dinky little TV set. So look around the back. We've got telescopic aerial again on the top. We've got external aerial input here, which is via looks like a 3.5-inch jack plug rather than the normal aerial plug. So the aerial normal aerial socket was on the other TV that we just looked at. This one has a 3.5-inch jack. I guess there wasn't any standard at that point. The people just used whatever they wanted. Sony included. Transistor TV receiver. So there won't be any valves in here. There'll be all transistor. Mains plug, of course. So we've got a tuning dial here. Let me move that round so you can see it. That's quite a nice tuning action on there. You see I'm moving it must be geared, so the outside wheel is moving faster than the inside numbers are turning. So that, I believe, is the VHF tuner. We've got some controls here. Looks like vertical hold, horizontal hold, brightness and contrast. There's a couple more on the back. HF frequency, height. Yeah, there's a couple of CRT related picture controls on the back there. This also has a charge switch at the bottom, although I can't see anywhere where you would plug in. Oh, hang on, there is a plug at the bottom there. If I just take this cable off. Yeah, it looks like there's a DC socket there. Well, I say a socket, they just look like pins sticking out of the circuit board. But there is some terminals there, so I wonder whether this originally would have been sold with an external battery pack, which could be plugged in there, plug the mains in, put it to charge, and it would charge that battery pack, and then perhaps it could run off that battery pack. On the side here, I don't know what sort of connectors they are. They don't look like jack plugs, but I'm suspecting that one is again an earphone connector, and then there's a picture of a tape there, so perhaps this is a line output. On the front here we've got the UHF tuner. So like I said, VHF is the tuner on the right hand side, UHF is this one here. Now you may have seen this in old TV programs, especially American TVs. They have this selector switch, quite a clunky switch that they move around. And what this does is it moves to one of the bands in the UHF range, and then the center wheel is used to fine-tune that band. So there won't be much range on this wheel. Basically switch the band and then you'll have a small amount of tuning, and if it's not there you can switch to the next one. So they could easily switch between stations using this selector switch in the days before there was any memories or presets. Power switch here, this pulls out to switch on, and then it's also the volume control as well. Yeah, it's quite a nice set, this, quite a retro set. Let me plug that power lead in and we'll just see it powered up. Bit crackly, that volume, it needs a bit of contact cleaner in there. We should get a picture, there we are. Now again, this is on the camera, I can see that it's scrolling, but to me, I don't see that. I just see the the static picture. And again, I want to try and get the RF modulator and see if we can get a picture on this screen as well as the other one. So whilst we've got this TV on the bench, I thought it'd be a good idea just to quickly run through a basic troubleshooting for the power supply on these kind of devices. So not necessarily this one, but any device, especially at the age of this one, you know, early 80s, mid 80s, anything that had battery power and a mains power and perhaps another source of power as well, like this one has the 12 volts. They all share a similar circuitry, and knowing how that works, you can easily troubleshoot the problems that you may have. So what a lot of people think is if something doesn't work, like the mains input or maybe one of the external DC inputs, if they don't work, most people think, well, I'll try the batteries because the batteries are always going to work. And that's not true. The batteries are the first thing to fail. When you see the circuitry, you'll understand why that is. So I'll just get the notepad and I'll quickly just draw out the simple diagram to show the circuitry of the power path in these devices. So typically the way these are connected, it's really simple, the circuitry. You have, on one side, you'll have the battery compartment. So we'll draw that as a couple of cells like that. And then at the end here, we'll have the output to the TV. So in this case, it's 12 volts, ground, and this is our TV output there. So what happens between here and here? Well, if it was directly connected, of course, put batteries in, it's going to work every time. Nothing to fail there, but it isn't connected like that. And what happens is, if you've got other power sources, we'll draw those in the middle here. So let's have our main supply, which will be, as it is internal in here, you've got a linear transformer. Before the days of switch mode, so there'll be a linear transformer and there'll be a rectifier and there'll be some smoothing capacitors, maybe a regulator on that as well. So what we're going to do is I'll just draw that as the mains input. So let's I'll just show you that as a 2-pin socket there, because that's the way the main socket is on the back. So this is our mains socket, in this case 240 volts, and we'll draw the output of that onto this rail here. Okay, and then carry on. Now, I understand you've got the transformer and the rectifier and everything else, but I'm just drawing it as the output of all of that circuitry. So as it comes out of this, as it's rectified and the transformer inside there, you'll eventually get 12 volts output onto this top rail. And the same with the barrel jack. So the barrel jack for 12 volts, that will output ground and 12 volts. Okay, now if it was connected like this, you can see the problem. If we plug in the mains and it outputs its 12 volts up to the top there, and you had the batteries in place, what would happen is this would try and charge the batteries up every time. And of course you could have batteries in there that you don't want charging up, and literally could cause some problems there. The same with the 12 volts here. If we plug 12 volts in on that rail and it went up to the top, we could also link it to the batteries. It could also link to the outputs of the main supply here. So what happens is this needs to be isolated. We need to make sure that only one of these is active at any one time. And the way that it works is that these sockets themselves, the sockets on the side of the TV set, have a built-in switch. So the main socket, for instance, doesn't just have 2 contacts. If you look on the circuit board, the bottom of that contact will probably have 2 contacts for the mains, and then another 2 contacts which will be the switch. So literally inside there'll be an internal switch like that accessed on these contacts. And when you plug in the main socket into there, it will break these contacts here. So I'll redraw this the way that it is connected inside this device. Okay, so this is the circuit redrawn, and these switches here are representing the switches that are built into these sockets. So if this was drawn correctly, you'd have some kind of box or dotted line around this area just to show that that switch was part of that socket. And what happens is, if there's nothing plugged in here and there's nothing plugged in here, these switches are closed circuit, in which case the batteries are connected to the output. So this is a continuous circuit all the way along here to the output. What happens when you plug in one of these devices, so say you plug in the mains plug here, this will break this switch. So instead of the switch being closed circuit, it becomes open circuit. And now what that's done is it's disconnected the battery from the rest of the circuit. So even if there was batteries in here, the 12-volt supply would just end here, wouldn't go anywhere else. So in effect, these batteries are disconnected. But the main supply, once it's been through the transformer and the rectifier and everything else, outputs its 12 volts onto this top rail, comes along to the next switch, which is closed because there's no barrel jack plugged in, and it carries along to the TV. Similarly, if there was the barrel jack plugged in and not the mains plugged in, so this would be closed circuit, the battery would still have a connection up to this switch, but as soon as you plug in the barrel jack, it's this switch that gets opened up. And now the circuit is broken from here and the 12-volt supply can carry on to the TV. So there's a number of switches in here. There's also, on this particular TV, you've got the charge switch on the side. Now the charge switch is in this circuit as well. I think the charge circuit would be, so I think the charge circuit must be a double pole switch, and it must break the connection from here to the TV. So perhaps there's a switch here which breaks so that no power gets to the TV. So perhaps it links back to the battery then. I haven't looked at the circuit in there, so I don't know exactly how that charge would work, but it's basically taking whatever is 12 volts from here or here and linking that back to the battery, but not to the TV. So there'll be some kind of other switch in that path as well. So potentially 1, 2, 3 switches. So if you get one of these devices and it's not working, you plug in the batteries and it's still not working, there's no power at all, then you need to work through these switches. However many connectors there are, there's going to be a switch as well in that path, and that needs looking at. Probably just contact cleaner or something like that. It's unusual that you would physically break these switches, but it is common to have these switches fail because they're normally closed all the time, and if you open them, if you do plug something in, it's possible there's a bit of dust or muck in there from the time, and when you go to close the switch again, it just doesn't close properly. So it's just something to bear in mind. You can't actually see the switch inside at all. Sometimes there's a little plastic lug you'll see inside, and you can press it with your finger or a screwdriver, and that'll be the switch, but it'll be in there somewhere. Yeah, so I just thought I'd quickly show you that. That might be useful to some troubleshooting when you're looking at these things. This one, as I said, it had multiple power sources, so this is certainly going to have that arrangement inside. So let's take a look at this RF modulator. Like I said, it was very cheap, so I'm not sure what to expect. Composite video and audio input. So we've got a setting on the side here, 61.25 megahertz and 67.25 megahertz. Now, if this is a UHF modulator, which I'm expecting it is, I'm hoping it is, then those frequencies are wrong. I'm not sure what they relate to, because UHF frequencies, they run from, what is it, about 470 megahertz up to 850 megahertz. That's the RF frequency that used to be broadcast in the UK. So that's channels 21 to 69. So yeah, I don't know what they are. Now these I recognise, DKIBG. This is actually the audio video spacing. So each channel has a certain amount of bandwidth for the video and the audio. There were different standards on the spacing, so how many megahertz different the audio was to the video, and these relate to those different standards. Let me quickly look that up, and I'll tell you what those were. So where there's two, DKBG, they seem to suggest the difference between VHF and UHF. I is actually the standard for the UK. So there's a chart which lists all of these for all the different countries, and I is the United Kingdom, so that is UHF only. As I said, UK didn't have a VHF. So if we take I as an example, looking at the chart, it's 65 lines, and the video to sound spacing on I is +6, so that's 6 megahertz. So for instance, if the channel was 479 megahertz, then the sound, so the video would be 479 and the sound would be 485 because it's +6. D and K, D is +6.5 and K is the same. So yeah, the channel spacing is the same whether it's UHF or VHF. So this one on the left hand side, DK is +6.5, I is +6, and B and G is +5.5. So what I'm expecting, if we do manage to get this working, get a picture on the screen, moving this will not affect the picture, but it will stop the sound, so the sound will only work on one of these depending on the standard of the set. So let's get this plugged in and we'll give it a try. So I've plugged this into USB power source. This is my output from, it's actually coming from a FreeSat box, so it's my set-top box. We've got video, composite video and audio. So I'll plug those into the corresponding connectors. And then our aerial output, I've got this RF lead here, so connect that into it and connect that into the external socket on the TV. Okay, let's get that in shot. Right, so let's turn this on. Let me just quickly put a TV on as well here, just so I can see the picture. No point messing around with this if we're not getting an output. Okay, so I've just plugged in TV here as well. I can see that over there. It's got a picture, so I know that we're getting the correct signals to this box. So let's have a tune around. Oh, there we are, straight away. Are we getting sound? So we're getting picture, but we're not getting sound. So let's have a look at those connections. Okay, so it's on the BG setting at the minute. Let me switch it to the UK. It would help if I unmuted it. Yeah, that would help. Okay. So there we are. That was quite successful. I can see that the picture that you're looking at still has a band across it, but I don't see that. I'm actually seeing quite a good picture.
Stop. Hey, stop. We'll find it. Think.
So
Over here, and then I just started unpacking.
So that's good. So this is working. Let me just try that switch on the side, the 61, 67 megahertz. Okay, so the picture does knock off. I wonder whether it just moves the band. It does. So, what's that? Round about 37? Channel 37? So channel 37, according to the chart, is 599 megahertz. And the audio is 605. Now on the other setting, it's round about what, 32, and channel 32 is 559. So about 40 megahertz different. Yeah, I think it's just labelled up incorrectly. I think it's just switching the channel number to a different channel number, but the frequencies don't match up. But it is working, and like I said, those settings on the side here, they just switch the sound spacing, so nothing on there, sound on I, and then yeah, nothing on the other one either. Okay, excellent. What I'll do is I'll hook the Sony up and we'll quickly try that on the Sony. So as said before, the Sony has what looks like a 3.5-inch jack socket. So I found a converter in my box of parts. So this is an Aerial 2 3.5-inch jack plug. So if I plug that into there and then plug the Aerial in, we should be able to get a connection. Now there's no switch on here. The other Crown TV had a switch for internal or rod antenna, so I'm assuming there's a switch in the back of this socket as part of the jack plug. So when you plug this in, I'm guessing that it disconnects this rod antenna. It may not. It may just keep them on the same circuit, but I assume it would disconnect. So the Aerial is plugged in. Let's switch on. Oh, okay. I think I was wrong before. So the UHF, this control isn't doing anything. The UHF must be the one round the back. VHF. Yeah. So this front connector is this front tuner is VHF, and UHF is the one on the side. So it is UHF that I need. So I'm just going to turn that control round. Oh, there we are. Perfect.
Did anyone think I was going to show? I'm going to show you something.
What do you want to show me?
That's a decent picture.
This?
Contrast.
Are you proposing to me? Lucas, this is really naily.
No. This is Haley's ring.
Yeah, that's good. I think that's a success. So whether I'm going to use this day to day is another thing, but yeah, if I needed to use it, put a picture on there, we can do that with this modulator. So yeah, it's pretty good value. Like I said, I'm sure it was £5 or £5.99 including delivery. So you know, next to nothing really, and you can make use of these old CRT monitors. So I hope you've enjoyed this video. There's I do like these CRTs. Like I said, I've got a few of them lying around. There's a Commodore PET there with one on, and I've also got an old Atari with a couple of screens on it. So yeah, there's also got a retro PC as well with a CRT. So yeah, there's a few CRTs knocking around here. But yeah, I do like this one. This Sony one is a good looking set. So like I said, I hope you've enjoyed it, and I will see you on the next one.